John chapter 18. John chapter 18. We're going to wrap this mini-series up with one final conversation. And it's just so happens it was not done on purpose, but Sunday morning I'm actually going to use the last conversation of this letter, of this book, as part of the lesson on Sunday morning. So it just happened to work out that way. But the last one we're going to do takes place over the course of 2 chapters. And it's just a fascinating conversation. We'll be in John 18, and we're going to start all the way down in verse 28. 2 weeks ago, we sort of took our way through the first part of John chapter 18, and there's multiple conversations in John 18. The conversation with the crowd that comes to arrest him. We talked about that at the beginning of class 2 weeks ago, just how interesting that conversation is because of their respect for Jesus, which is mind-blowing. They come to arrest him, and when they are asked, who do you seek? And they say, Jesus of Nazareth. And Jesus says, I am he. They all fall back. He's one man against a crowd. And because he says, I am Jesus, they fall back. We talked about that. We talked about Annas and Caiaphas and the cowardice of those men, the absolute cowardice of those men, and the way that they speak to Jesus. They have no moral scruples about them. And Jesus calls them on that. That was where we sort of wrapped up in verse 23 of John chapter 18. Jesus said, listen, if what I said is wrong, then bear witness about the wrong. But if what I said is right, then why do you strike me? They were going outside of their own rules and regulations. They were putting hands physically, violently on Jesus. And Jesus says, why are you doing that? Why are you doing that? If I'm saying something wrong, then bear witness about what I'm saying is wrong. But if what I'm saying is right, why are you reacting so violently? And verse 24 says, Annas then sent him bound to Caiaphas. He didn't have a response. So we pick up in verse 28, and there is this hypocritical thing that happens right out of the gate for our study today. Verse 28, then they led Jesus from the house of Caiaphas to the governor's headquarters. It was early morning. They themselves did not enter the governor's headquarters so that they would not be defiled, but could eat the Passover. We mentioned this briefly at the very end of class 2 weeks ago, the hypocrisy of these people. They're going to see to it that Jesus has a fake trial. They're going to see to it that Jesus is murdered, but yet they won't walk into the governor's headquarters because they don't want to be defiled. The absolute abject hypocrisy of these people. And then it's easy for me to look at that and blame them and rant about them and their hypocrisy, and yet it's not hard to find the application because there are many people who are living in sin, who are doing things in direct opposition of the will of God, and yet they'll show up at a church building, they'll show up at a worship service and act as though basically they've done no wrong. And so there's an application there that we have to make sure, have to be certain the message that we're sending. So Pilate, verse 29, went outside. Here's your introduction to Pilate. Pilate is a unique character in the gospel accounts because of his interactions with Jesus. And that's why I wanted to save this one for the very last conversation. His interactions with Jesus are fascinating because it seems like he has a little more grip on who Jesus might be than even the people that have brought Jesus up on trial. And the people that brought him up on trial should have known who he was from the very beginning. So Pilate goes out and asks, what accusation do you bring against this man? Legally, Pilate is merely doing the least amount he has to do. The least amount is at least find out what the accusation is. And then truthfully, Pilate tries to get out from under it. The first conversation is not between Jesus and Pilate. The first conversation is between Pilate and these people who have brought Jesus up on trial. Legally, all Pilate's trying to do is finish the job. What's the accusation against this man? If they would have said murder, if they would have said robbery, if they would have said anything, Pilate would have been able to say, okay, then here's what we're going to do. And it would have been over. Look at their response. Verse 30. They answered him, if this, and I want you to pay attention to how they describe him. If this man were not doing evil, we would not have delivered him over to you. At first, in this conversation, Jesus is nothing more than a man, both to Pilate and the group that have brought him. I say it's fascinating because if you go over one chapter to chapter 19 and you look at verse 15, Pilate says, shall I crucify your what? King. When the conversation started, he's nothing more than a man. By the time you get to 19, Pilate even calls him your king. So what's fascinating about this is how the conversation morphs Pilate's understanding of who he's dealing with. Now, please understand at the forefront, I am not letting Pilate off the hook. Pilate is an evil man. Okay? Please don't misunderstand. He is an evil man. However, I find it fascinating that this evil man even comes to the conclusion that this man must be something different than just a man. It's fascinating to me. Maybe it's not to anybody else, but it is to me. So that's where I'm aiming at. Okay. All right. Back to 18. All right. So 31, Pilate says, well, good. This is on y'all then. I don't have to do anything. If he's done evil to you, then it's up to you to do something. I don't have to do anything. Why is that? Who is Pilate dealing with? Who is these people? The Jews, right? And at large, in general, it's the Jews. So why is Pilate able to just immediately dismiss them and say, go away then?
Religious life.
Yeah, because you got your own set of stuff. If he's done evil to you, then that's on you. And we don't have to get involved. Did the Roman government want to deal with the Jews? No. They had no desire to deal with the Jews. As a matter of fact, the threat stood at a constant. If you Jews get out of hand, we're not going to deal with you. We're going to send the military down and we're going to wipe you out. So when they come to Pilate, please understand the temperament. Why are the Jews then, with that understanding of the temperament, why are the Jews taking the risk of creating a problem by going to Pilate with Jesus? Why are they taking the risk?
If you deal with him, then there won't be a problem.
There you go.
Supposedly.
They need the Romans to do what?
Execute.
Mm-hmm. They need the Romans to kill him. They need him dead. They need this finished. Can the Jews just outright have somebody killed? No, ma'am, no, sir. Can't do it.
And they say that in verse 30. And kill Stephen.
Yeah, right. Now you're going to get to Acts chapter 7, and you're going to get some people certainly stepping over the line of what they could do.
Pilate probably saying that it could be a big ordeal if he did it.
Well, if you remember, and I'm jumping ahead, but that's okay. What's the final thing that they use to get Pilate to okay this execution? What's their final plea to him?
Was it his last?
Mm-mm. If you don't do this,
You're not loyal.
you're no friend of Caesar's. That's their final, I guess that's the trump card, right? That's the spade. That's the ace of spades. That's the, if nothing else, will appeal to your desire to be in the position you're in. If you don't do this, you're no friend of Caesar's. Now Pilate is compelled by sadly, his earthly selfishness to oblige. Now, before we get to all that though, they admit, the end of verse 31, they admit readily, it is not lawful for us to put anyone to death. This was to fulfill the word that Jesus had spoken to show by what kind of death he was going to die. John puts that in there, and I've always kind of read over that, just kind of, that's just part of the reading, and you just go on by it. Don't ignore that. Don't ignore that, because even Pilate has a part to play in something that Jesus already knew. I found that interesting about their conversations. Jesus is going to say as much in chapter 19 and verse 11. You'd have no authority over me at all unless it had been given you from above. Pilate, we've already gone down this road. Pilate, I know who you are, and I know what we're doing, and I'm well aware of what's happening. There's power in that, by the way. There's power in that. There's a reason why Jesus is not intimidated at any moment. That crowd shows up in the garden. What happens? Who do you seek? Jesus of Nazareth. I'm he. And they all fall back. Peter rips his sword out, goes to slinging his sword. Stop that. Stop that. I know what's happening. So stop. Then he goes in front of Annas and he goes in front of Caiaphas. They're putting hands on him. They're slapping him around. They're beating him up. Jesus sticks to the logic. If I'd done something wrong, go ahead and call me on it. If I haven't, then why are you striking me like this? He goes in front of Pilate. You ought to be scared. If you're a Jew living in that day, you better be scared standing in front of a Roman governor like this. You need to be absolutely shaking. He's not even scared. Nope. Not intimidated, not fearful. So my question is, why? The easy answer is, and I'm getting off on a sidebar, but this is okay. It's a good sidebar. The easy answer is because he's God. That's why he's not scared. Is that the answer? Is that the answer? Because he's God, he's not scared. So there's nothing for us to take away from that. It's just because he's God, he doesn't have to be afraid. So the rest of us have to be afraid when we're facing situations like this, right? Because we're just human. What happened before he gets arrested? Prayed. He prayed. So is it possible that you can walk into a scenario that you ought to be afraid according to the world standards? Is it possible you can walk into that scenario and not be afraid? Should be. Should be. When my dad this has been 20 years ago now almost, Dad had a car wreck a long time ago when he was probably in his early 30s and had never gone to the doctor, had never went to the hospital, nothing. And he had suffered some pretty significant damage to his neck. He just wouldn't go to the doctor. And over time, some of that had calcified and he had bone spurs and just some nasty stuff going on. So about 20 years ago, a doctor told him, said, listen, you're either going to have surgery or you're not going to be able to enjoy the final however many years of your life because you're not going to be able to move your head. So it's 20 years ago, and Dad finally relents and says, okay, we'll have the surgery. And my dad is a worrier by nature. It's just who he is. I love him. I absolutely love him, but he's a worrier by nature. He's concerned. He wants everything to work out like it should, and he was very worried about this surgery. They had told him what they were going to do, and I'll spare you all the gory details, but it was going to be very invasive and very long and drawn out, and he was very, very concerned about it. And he was talking to us boys. There's 3 of us boys, and my oldest brother, I was talking to him on the phone one night, and my dad was saying, this is what they're going to do, and I'm going to have to do this, and we're going to have to do that, and it's going to be this and this. And my brother said, can I stop you just for a second? I said, sure, what is it? He said, I don't mean to be rude, and I'm certainly not trying to be disrespectful, but if you can't pray to the creator of the world and lay your head down at night, then maybe you ought to check your faith. And I remember my dad kind of getting front, almost mad. How dare you, And the more he thought about that, the more he came back around. I remember him telling my oldest brother, I appreciate you saying that.
But I think you can be afraid and you still have faith and believe.
Well, you're going to have a natural reaction, right? If a snake comes in here, y'all going to see fear. Because there'll be a me-sized hole in that wall right there. Oh, no. Start with me. Now I'm sweating. There's certain things, but the fear of the outcome. Jesus wasn't afraid of the outcome. I'm not afraid. I don't mean to sound morbid, but if I were to walk out here and collapse and die of a heart attack in this parking lot, I'm okay. That's okay. Now, people might be sad. I don't know. Some people may be like, no, I know. I'm being morbidly. Some say he's behind my car. Would y'all scoot him over at least? No, but honestly, if that were to happen, I'm okay with that. You need to know that. I'm okay with that. I'm not scared of that.
You're okay with that, but if you knew when you went out that door that you was going to be struck dead, I say you would be afraid to go out the door.
I'm not.
I think we'd be afraid of pain.
Maybe the pain of it. Yeah.
But not the outcome.
No, I'm not scared of the outcome.
You'd be thinking about leaving your children and family.
Well, sure, there'd be emotional ties
That's
to
the human.
this.
It's the human part of us.
There's emotional ties to what we have here, but the other part of that is sometimes Satan uses that against you.
But Jesus asked the Father to remove this from me if it could be possible. He was human in that sense.
But he's not afraid of it.
No, he wasn't afraid, but yet he was human.
I think in the garden, when he was praying, probably about pain.
Yeah, I know what's coming, and it's going to be awful. The physical pain is going to be horrific.
Yeah.
And if there's any other way to do this,
We talked about crying.
he learned obedience even through tears.
He was in agony,
Mm-hmm.
thinking about what he would go through.
Yep, but he's not scared of it.
But he was willing to do it
Mhm.
to save everyone.
Sure.
In Luke's
He was
gospel,
willing to obey.
he turns and tells the women, though, who were mourning for him, do not weep for him.
Mm-hmm.
And then he goes on and talks about actually some prophecy about what was coming. And he knew the outcome for himself, so he's comforting the women. Now, they weren't allowed at that point to do that. I don't care what he said.
Right.
I'm going to be afraid because I know that I'm older than you. I'm smarter than you. He said, don't weep.
Yeah.
Do not weep for me. He puts things in a right perspective. And that's the thing that we have to learn from the Lord is he's always, his instruction is going to give us the right perspective,
Mm-hmm.
whatever it may be.
Go ahead, Lyndall.
All throughout the Bible, we're told over and over, many, many times, do not fear, do not be afraid. When they were about to cross the Jordan and take the promised land, they talked about how big the people were, their chariots of iron, their horses. God over and over said, be courageous, do not fear, and he tells them why. I am fighting for you. I'm with you. And Jesus does the same thing. He tells his disciples over and over, do not fear.
The struggle we have is and I say we because I've been in this boat too, and there's probably still going to be moments in my life where I'm going to fall back into this mentality. what we know is what we have here. So a lot of times we fully put our faith in what we have here. My house, my health, my family, my et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And over again in Scripture, God says, now wait a minute. Be very careful. Don't put your faith in possessions. Don't put your faith in other people. Put your faith in me. It's why Paul said, for me to live is Christ. And what? We read that and we're like, that's right, Paul, that's right. And then we get up every morning and don't live that. We're like, that's right, Paul, that's right. For me to live is Christ and die is gain. And then we get up in the morning, we're like, I just hope, and we're clutching to all of this. And I think Jesus is teaching here, and Luke's a great example. That line from Luke, when he turns around and those women are, they're inconsolable according to what the world standards is. They're losing this man that they've been following. And Jesus turns around and says, do not cry for me.
And when we tell our children the same thing.
I hope so.
Yeah.
They do.
Don't cry. Don't.
I hope so.
Don't grieve over them.
Look, I hugged Jackie Poss and she said, I'm not crying for Alvin. She said, it's us. We miss him. And I said, there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not telling you that's wrong. I'm telling you that if I were to walk out this door and I knew, as soon as I open that door, I'm going down right there, I'm okay with it.
They never could really understand when Jesus told them, when you see me, you see the Father.
Well, there was, again, the human aspect of it is hard.
Yeah.
It's hard to beat the human side because it's what we know. I'm not telling you that it's easy. I'm not telling you should get up tomorrow morning and have some new, completely new idea. It's a struggle. It's something you got to grow into. I'm not here to tell you it's easy. I'm just here to tell you that at no point, like 32, John 18:32, Jesus knows when those guys show up dragging him along and they talk to Pilate, Jesus fully is aware of what death he's going to die. They're going to take me and they're going to beat me half to death. They're going to put nails in me and they're going to hang me up as a spectacle for everybody to look at. And there's not 1 second where Jesus is like, I'm really scared of that.
And he said over and over, to this end did I come here.
In the conversation with Pilate, in John 18 and verse 37, he's going to tell Pilate to his face, for this purpose I was born. You can't touch a man driven like that. You can kill the body. You are not killing what matters most. And that sounds awful familiar, doesn't it? It sounds like that was a teaching Jesus taught, wasn't it? Don't fear the ones that can kill the body, but fear the one what? Okay, so he's living that out. He didn't just say it because it was some cool words to say. He's living it out. I'm not afraid of you. You can kill this body, but you're not going to kill what's going to happen next. And that's why, okay, man, I am all over the map today. I'm going to land the plane eventually. It may be 11:45, and it'll be just me in here, and that's it. But it'll be okay. I'll land the plane at 11:45. All right? It's why when you get to Acts 1, this thing happens in Acts 1 where they ask him, are you finally going to, so here's the words, Lord, will you at this time restore the kingdom to Israel? Acts 1:6, right? So he's come back. He's back from the dead. He's been resurrected. And their response is what? Is it spiritual or earthly? Earthly.
And are we going to be the top dog?
Yeah. So this is it, man. You beat death, and now we get to be. What is Jesus' response? It's not for you to know.
He was crying about it.
It is not for you to know times or seasons that the Father is fixed by his own authority, but you will receive power when the Holy Spirit has come upon you. Now, here's the part you got to pay attention to. And you will be my witnesses in Jerusalem, in all Judea and Samaria, and to the end of the earth. So did he answer their question? Yes, he answered their question. Did he answer it the way that they wanted him to answer it? No. Are you going to restore power to Israel? That's a foolish question. That's a human question. And he gives them a spiritual answer.
They never became a power again.
Never. Because that's never been the point, right? That was Jesus' whole mantra, his whole teaching. This that you're a part of now supersedes earthly kingdoms. It supersedes government. It supersedes democracy or whatever else. It supersedes all of that. The kingdom you're a part of now is global. Man, we're reaching every person we come in contact with. And that's what sets off the book we know as the Acts of the Apostles, is that moment from Jesus where they said something earthly. Jesus responded with something heavenly and said, now go to work. And man, do they ever go to work. They go to work. Go ahead.
Their lack of fear very shortly shows us too, when they are reprimanded for teaching about Jesus, and they openly say, we're going to do what God said, not what you say.
So Acts 4. 4 and 5 both. So you get to 4 and they're praying, verse 31. They prayed, the place in which they were gathered was shaken. They were all filled with the Holy Spirit and continued to speak the word of God with boldness. Like they are, so, I mean, you can't read the way Jesus responds in this moment and say Jesus had any fear about it.
We made the point a while ago, Jesus prayed about that. Well, his disciples prayed about it.
That's right.
Same thing.
And they prayed for boldness, right? They didn't pray, Lord, keep the police from knocking on our door. They said, bring them on. Not in some sort of rebellious, we want to get arrested mentality. Don't get it. That's another human part of it.
Obedient to God.
God said this, I'm going to do this. Now, if that gets me in trouble, so be it. Acts 4, what did they say? We can't help but speak the name of Jesus. Were they afraid? They scared of what was going to happen to them next? No. You think about Acts 16 when they're sitting in a jail cell, what are they doing? What Paul and Silas doing? Singing, worshiping God, because, hey, this is where we are today. This is what we're doing today. And then God opens the gates. And I've always found it interesting. If you tell me that I'm going to be in jail, and let's say I've been there a while, and the gate kicks open, what's the human side of me saying?
Get out.
I'm out of there. There'll be a vapor trail. I am. And not one of them people leave. I don't know what to tell you about that. I know what Paul and Silas were doing. And I know what happened next. And I know that none of them got up and left. And because of that, that jailer and his family were baptized and saved. I'm just here to tell you that there's something to be said for what Jesus knows, what God knows, and what we don't know. And it's a whole lot better for us to rest in what he knows than to worry about what we don't know.
Yes, and you see, just look at the behavior of these two examples that we're looking at. Pilate, the reason he acts the way he does is because he is uncertain that Jesus is the king. Those apostles are certain that he is the king. And so their behavior is radically different from Pilate. Pilate shows waffling and crowd pleasing because he is just uncertain. He's just uncertain. He's not saying even that he's not a king, but he's just not certain that he is one. And so because of that place, it puts him in that horrible position of failing in his faith. The other men that you're talking about prove that they believe Jesus to be the king.
Go ahead, Mr. Glenn.
Pontius was between a rock and a hard place.
Sure.
He knew and he believed that Jesus was innocent. his wife had told him.
That's
he
right.
was-
That's right. Stay away from that man.
In his favor. But Pontius, after this, was taken away, his office was
Mhm.
taken away, and someone else was given the
Mhm. That's right.
overseer in Israel.
That's right.
He was banished to an island and died there. That's history now.
Correct.
You can't find it here.
Correct. That's correct.
And he died there. And I've always considered that it was for his lack of backbone in this thing that there was sufficient pressure from heaven, maybe.
Maybe so.
That's all this.
Look at what happens. This man, Pilate, puts an innocent man to death. Okay? Now, didn't have the backbone to stand up and put Barabbas to death instead of, he allowed the crowd to choose, which was, I know, tradition, but he's still the man in charge. After the fact, the innocent man he put to death, that was supposed to stop this cult or whatever term you want to use that was growing, it was supposed to stop when that man died. 3 days later, that man is raised and is seen by all these people in the following days and weeks to come. And now the cult, and I'm using that term very loosely, is exploding all over the world. The Roman government looks at Pilate and says, man, you're talking about the ultimate fail. You can't even kill a guy right. And he ends up suffering this, embarrassment, this public embarrassment for that. But it all came back to this conversation. Because Jesus doesn't show any fear, any remorse, I guess, if you want to use that word, because he's not guilty of anything. If you want to say he's guilty of something, he's guilty of teaching. That's what he's guilty of. He's guilty of teaching.
Proverbs says that God hates acquitting the guilty and he hates condemning the innocent.
Correct. And that is what is happening. The fascinating conversation between Jesus and Pilate starts in 33. And there's going to be some interruptions along the way. But their conversation should be a warning to all of us, even now. And I'm going to show that in just a second. All right. Pilate entered his headquarters and called Jesus and said to him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" Jesus answered, "Do you say this of your own accord, or did others say it to you about me?" Pilate answered, "Am I a Jew? Your own nation and the chief priests have delivered you over to me." Pay attention to this question. What have you done? Why is Pilate asking that question? Because the Jews didn't even tell him what he had done. You're in here. They won't even tell me what you did. And if all of them want you dealt with by me, what have you done? Jesus answered, "My kingdom is not of this world. If my kingdom were of this world, my servants would have been fighting that I might not be delivered over to the Jews. But my kingdom is not from this world." Always found it somewhat interesting, just as a side note, that Jesus doesn't say that I might not be delivered over to you. You notice that? If he was afraid of Pilate, that's the time to say it. If my kingdom were of this world, then my servants would be fighting so I might not be delivered to you, because you Romans, we know what you do. That would have been the time to say it. He's not even afraid of the Jews, by the way, but if he were going to show fear, this would have been the place to show it. And this is not a statement of fear. It is a statement of absolute disappointment and disgust. The Jews should have known better. You should have known. And if my kingdom were of this world, then they'd be fighting so that the Jews wouldn't have been able to do what they've done. But he reminds them one more time. He says it twice. He says at the beginning of that little speech in verse 36, says it at the end of verse 36. My kingdom is not from the world. Pilate said to him, so you are a king. What did he focus on?
Leadership.
Yeah, he focused on political.
Yeah.
So you are a king. Well, you just missed the whole point. You just missed the entire point of what Jesus was saying. Because what's Pilate focused on? The here and now, the right now, this earthly thing. Jesus answered, you say that I am a king. I love that sentence. I love that. He just put it right back on Pilate. You're using that terminology. That's you. Pilate, that's what you care about. And if that's what you need to call me for this thing to move along, then so be it. You say that I'm a king. And I don't mean this to be crass or blunt, or maybe I do. Does Jesus care about being called a king at this, like right now, this earthly thing that Pilate's referring to? Does Jesus care anything about that right now?
No.
No, not one bit. Pilate, this isn't a discussion about the political standing of Rome versus the Jews or Rome versus the world. You've got this all wrong, Pilate. You say that I'm a king. For this purpose I was born, and for this purpose I have come into the world. To do what? Everyone who is of the truth listens to my voice. And Pilate asks that question that had to haunt him maybe every day for the rest of his life.
Don't you know that did shock him when he said everyone at this?
That's right.
Yeah.
Everyone who is of the truth listens to me.
Yeah.
Which is,
What he don't
I was about to say, which is you, Pilate.
Yeah.
That's you.
There's no missing him.
No, sir. No, sir. You cannot miss. Pilate's response is, what is truth? Man, if he had any idea, the theological question that he just dropped. After he had said this, he went back outside to the Jews and told them, I find no guilt in him. So here's your interruption in the conversation. I find no guilt in him, but you have a custom that I should release one man for you at the Passover. So do you want me to release to you? Notice the difference. Go back to 18 and verse 29. What accusation do you bring against this man? Now you get to 18 and 39. Do you want me to release to you the King of the Jews? They cried out again, not this man, but Barabbas. The terminology is interesting. Like I said, even Pilate recognizes there's something different. And there's no getting around, as Alex mentioned just a second ago, there's no getting around in 38. Pilate asks the question, what is truth? And Jesus has already answered that for him. Everyone who is in the truth listens to my voice. You're Pilate.
He was probably scared of the truth himself.
I was nervous.
To make the wrong decision.
Pilate's very nervous.
Yes,
Almost see
he
it's in there scratching his face.
Yeah, what do I do now?
What am I gonna do?
is. Yeah.
And at the end of 18, it feels like he found the loophole, right? It feels like he found the loophole. We have a tradition that we release somebody. So you don't want me to release Barabbas, a known insurrectionist, a known murderer? Now, remember what we talked about. If the Jews stir up trouble, what if the Romans told them? It'll be your death. Well, what is an insurrectionist?
Somebody who causes
Stirred up.
strife in the community. Riot.
With the point of trying to get the government to look at them, right? That's the whole point of an insurrection, is to either overthrow the government or get their attention. And so Pilate has found the loophole. There's no way any Jew out there in their right mind wants an insurrectionist and a murderer walking the streets. So I tell you what we're going to do. It's either the king of the Jews or it's this guy. And what do they say? Give us the insurrectionist.
Charles Manson,
Yeah, right. Charles Manson.
you'd never pick him.
If you put Charles Manson up against somebody that you knew was innocent, there's not a human being on this planet, at least I don't think so, that would be like, yeah, give us Manson. Nobody. And yet that's what's it.
It is acquitting of guilt.
Absolutely. It's not just that they picked Barabbas.
And it's not just that it applies to you,
Mm-mm.
because they condemned the innocent.
They condemned the innocent,
Also,
and in the same swipe, they do two things that God hates in one single motion. They release a guilty man, known guilty man. This isn't like alleged. They know for a fact this man has committed insurrection and murder. They let him walk while convicting an innocent. Now, let me hurry through this last part here. Pilate took Jesus, chapter 19, flogged him. Flogging him, oof, that is bad news, people. If you don't know nothing about it, it is bad, bad news. I will not get into the details, but it is, a lot of people died on that post being flogged. It is that bad. It is horrible.
They can just get beat for 39.
The Jews had that rule. The Romans had no such rule. The Romans swung until they got tired. And then if they felt like you hadn't had enough, they'd just tag out and another guy would step in and swing on you. It's evil, evil. The soldiers twisted together a crown of thorns, put it on his head, arrayed him in a purple robe. Okay, so now we're not just beating him up physically. Now we're trying to humiliate him. They came up to him saying, "Hail, King of the Jews." And they struck him with their hands. Pilate went out again and said to them, "See, I am bringing him out to you that you may know that I find no guilt in him." What is he banking on?
Their decision.
He's banking on them going, you know what, you're right.
We see the light.
Yeah, we're sorry.
Do you want me?
Jesus came out wearing the crown of thorns, the purple robe. Pilate said to them, I've always found this phrase interesting too. Behold what? The man. Pilate uses their terminology. You want me to call him a man? Fine. Behold the man. This is not done, by the way. This is not done. I've seen people before say that this was Pilate mocking him. I don't get that feeling at all. I think he's looking at them going, we've done enough. Look at him. We've beaten him to within an inch of his life. We've made fun of him. We've humiliated him in front of the public. We've done enough. When the chief priests, the officers saw who? It's not Pilate. It's a misconception too, is that when they saw Pilate come out, they started chanting, "Crucify him." That's not what happens. They see Jesus beaten and bloodied and humiliated, and they still chant, "Crucify him, crucify him."
I was hoping that this was enough to satisfy them.
Look at what we've done to him.
And they saw Jesus wearing the crown of thorns and the purple robe.
It's also a question of responsibility.
Sure.
He wants it to be offered.
Yeah, get this off of me.
Some kind of way.
Get this off of me.
Yeah.
Please don't make me have to do this.
Because it said in verse 8, he was even more afraid.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's what I was getting to, because for every bit of this, Jesus is not scared. Guess who is scared? the whole time.
Probably the message from his wife.
Woo!
That's what's tending to release the man.
Have nothing to do with this man, Pilate. Yes. And that's another stick to him, right? Is I know what I see in front of me, and yet even in my own home, if you want to use that term loosely, I've got my wife telling me, get away from him. Get away from him. Look at what happens.
The Romans were a strong power. They didn't think anything about hurting somebody.
No.
Or offending somebody. They were probably one of the worst nations.
Oh, absolutely.
That had to be to deliver up Jesus Christ.
And these soldiers, by the way, they're not doing anything different than they would have done for any other person. They were this way to everybody. Beat you, mock you, humiliate you. They didn't care. It's Pilate that's the one. Okay, so then you get to 7. Well, Pilate says at the end of 6, take him yourselves and crucify him. I find no guilt in him. Now, here's the interesting part about that. Could the Jews actually do that? No. Crucifixion is not allowed to be done by the Jews. That's a Roman thing.
Throwing rocks at him.
Yeah, and here's Pilate going, look, I'll even give you permission to use our murderous action. I'll let you use that. Take him yourselves and crucify him. Just get this off of me. Verse 8, as Lyndall said, look, what is it that makes him afraid? Well, more afraid. Read verse 8 carefully. What is it that makes him more afraid?
What they said in verse 7,
What did they say in verse 7? Go ahead.
made him out to be the son of God.
Oh, man.
Made him set out.
Why would that make Pilate more afraid? What does he care? What does he care? He's a Roman governor, man. What does he care?
One thing you see, Jesus wasn't afraid.
No, Jesus is not afraid of him.
No, he wasn't afraid. And most people be afraid of the governor or whatever he was.
What's bigger than an earthly government, though?
They're polytheistic.
They're polytheistic.
They're worried about gods.
They're worried about little g gods all the time. And if you're going to tell us this man made himself out to be a, whoa. You want to know why Pilate's more afraid? Because Pilate just came face to face with the realization that the man he just had beaten to within an inch of his life, he's had humiliated, who he just gave permission, they won't take it, but who he just gave permission for the Jews to go crucify. Now the Jews let out with, this man made himself out to be the Son of God. And that's the, so watch what he does, though. I know I'm out of time. I'm going to try to hurry. He entered his headquarters again. Now, notice what he does. They say that. And his response is not, so who cares? His response is to turn on his heel, go right back in there and go face to face with Jesus one more time.
These people was punished from all of this in about 35 years.
And it was bad.
Really bad.
And it was real. It was very, very ugly.
If you look at it, just
Completely
Pilate,
destroyed.
Mm-hmm.
Completely destroyed.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead, Frank.
if you look at it real close, Pilate was scared of him himself.
Mm-hmm.
Pilate was scared of him.
Look at verse 9. What's his question? Okay, so did he care anything about who Jesus was or where he was from earlier? No. It's the comment, he made himself to be a son of God. Okay, where are you from? Who are you really, is the question. Jesus gave him no answer. Pilate said to him, you'll not speak to me? Do you not know that I have authority to release you and authority to crucify you? And there's the,
Slapped him upside the head on an answer.
I was going to say, this answer is the ultimate, the kids would say it's the ultimate shut up juice. It is the enough. So Jesus delivers, you would have no authority over me at all. Now, make sure you understand all the prepositional phrases that go in that. It's not just authority. This is not about Romans anymore. It ain't about the Jews. This is me and you, Pilate. This is one-to-one, man-to-man. You would have no authority over me. That's the first part. At all is the second part. Unless is the third part. It had been given to you from above. Therefore, right? So Pilate number one, you need to come to grips with who you're messing with. And you obviously don't know. Second of all, Pilate, you need to understand there's something bigger than you. Therefore, he who delivered me over to you has the greater sin. The reason why I know that's a huge watershed moment, and like I said, it's the glass of shut up juice, is verse 12. From then on, what? Pilate's trying. I got to get this guy out of here. From then on, Pilate sought to release him. The Jews cried out, what did I tell you? This is their final play, the final ace of spades. If you turn him loose, you're no friend of Caesar's. Verse 13, when Pilate heard these words, he brought Jesus out, sat down on the judgment seat at a place called the Stone Pavement in the Aramaic of Gabbatha. Now it was the day of preparation of the Passover. It was about the 6th hour. He said to the Jews, behold your king. They cried out, away with him, crucify him. Pilate's last words is what we have recorded here. Shall I crucify your king? And their answer ought to rattle you to your very core. We have no king but Caesar. That is disgusting. It is disappointing. It's not even a strong enough word.
That's how low they would stoop.
That's how low they would go. Defy God openly by saying we have no king but Caesar. How unbelievably despicable. So, verse 16. He delivered him over to be crucified. It's his final moment of cowardice. At any moment, could Pilate have said, you know what? I'm not doing this. This man goes. I'm not doing this. Could he have done that?
His own mouth, he testified that he could.
I have the authority to what?
He sent his own neck.
I can release you or crucify you. Well, then release him, man. Then prove it.
He proved it. He was trying to prove it in the office there when he was talking.
That's it. That's it.
That's where I thought about a while ago, that political come in then. He was sitting with people. And now he's got to go home and tell mom.
Yeah.
Can you imagine that conversation? Can you imagine that conversation when those people go traipsing off to go do what they're going to do, and he's left standing there? Because those guys in that position didn't watch those crucifixions. They didn't have to. Their job was to send them out. The soldier's job was to finish it.
Those hypocritical Jews, Jewish leaders, were really had no pain in their conscience because they thought he was guilty of blasphemy. You know, to say,
Yep.
my Father is from above. They thought that was blasphemous.
Yeah. Their belief was, look at what we're doing. We are purifying religion by getting rid of this man.
The message is also clear about Pilate that he knew it was that opinion that the Jews
Yep.
had handed Jesus over. He knew they had something selfish motivated in this.
And as he watched that, he
He smelled
knew
that. He still went through it.
that's it. He watched them and he knew full well You're not doing this because you want to purify religion. And you're not doing this because, bless your hearts, you're trying to take care of the traditions and the law and all that. You're doing this because he's gaining a following and you want him gone. You want him gone. And you'll go by any means necessary to get him gone. As proved, like I said, in 1915 and 16, when they say we have no king but Caesar, that ought to turn your stomach.
This title, Friend of Caesar, was an official title. I don't know whether John is using it that way or not, but it was an official title of a few senators and a few generals and a few other friends
Right.
that had a
Connections.
close inner circle to Nero. It was
Mm.
called Friends of Caesar.
And he
So
and
whether
you
they're using that term.
and even if they're not,
he
they
has
know
been
that.
real close to Caesar.
Well, and that terminology would have meant something to him. If he was not in that circle, you know he desperately wanted to be in that circle. And if he's in that circle, he desperately wants to stay in that circle. So when they say, you let him walk and you're no friend of Caesar, that's the flag, man. Then I got to do something. I don't have a choice. Yes, you do.
The truth is, politicians always know the right word
That's it.
to get out of
That's
that
it.
situation. They always-
To get out from under it. That's right. And that's in this conversation, and I'm gonna hush. In this conversation, I don't want you to lose sight of the fact that Jesus never once gets flustered, never once loses control, even though he sees what's happened. This is going to result in me leaving this place to be crucified. He never once slams his fists on the table, screams, this isn't fair. Never once. The person who makes the reactions and the adjustments is Pilate, because there's no backbone there. There's nothing for him to go back to. In your moment of pressure, you will go back to what you rely on most. What did Pilate go to under pressure? My standing where I'm at.
And even to the end, he put the sign on the cross.
Yep.
And when they tell him, don't put that up there, what does he tell them?
That's not what I put.
It stays. Like his, and I guess maybe that,
It's written.
that's right. And maybe that helped. I guess maybe that helped him sleep at night. It shouldn't have, but maybe it did, is to know that he put some sign up there, but he does. Now they say, take that down. He says, what I wrote. You just get over it.
Should have made him not sleep at night.
It should have kept him up all hours. Shouldn't it? Thank y'all.